Today, we're going to dive into the whole generation gap thing, but probably in a way you haven't seen before. We're looking at it through the lens of a really fascinating case study from Thailand. You know, we hear about generational clashes all the time, right? Especially in the workplace. But are those differences actually real, or are they just a bunch of tired stereotypes? Let's dig a little deeper and get beneath the surface.
Okay, so first things first, we need to get a handle on what we actually mean by generation. It's way more than just a label. So here's the key idea. A generation isn't just about the year you were born. Not at all. It's about the massive society-shifting events you live through when you're young. You know, things like wars, economic booms, or huge tech revolutions. These are the shared experiences that basically forge a common way of seeing the world. And I love this quote. It perfectly explains how these shared experiences create a kind of collective mental map. It's like a blueprint that guides an entire generation's choices, what they think is important, and even their definition of a good life. All right, let's apply this idea to our case study, Thailand. We're zeroing in on Thai Gen X and Gen Y, two generations that were shaped by a period of incredible and often pretty turbulent change. Just look at this timeline. You can immediately see a really stark contrast in the defining moments for these two groups. Thai Gen X came of age during a lot of political turbulence, but also this huge economic boom. Gen Y, on the other hand, they grew up dealing with major national crises, like the absolutely devastating 2004 tsunami and a war on drugs, all while the internet was connecting them to the rest of the world.
So what you have here are two very, very different stories. One generation was shaped by this massive shift from military to civilian rule and had to kind of learn and adapt to new technology as adults. The other was really defined by these national traumas and grew up as true digital natives. For them, tech wasn't new, it was just part of life.
So that brings up a big question. How in the world do you actually measure the mental map of an entire generation? I mean, how do you put a number on something as abstract as core values? Well, the study used this really clever method called the Rokeach Value Survey, and it separates values into two different types. Think of it like this. Terminal values are your destination, what you ultimately want to get out of life, things like health or security. Instrumental values, on the other hand, are the journey, the behaviors you think are the best way to get there, like being ambitious or honest.
So the researchers gave people these two lists of 18 values each and basically asked them a simple question. Rank these in order of importance to you. This is brilliant because it forces you to make tough choices and reveal what really matters most, creating this unique priority list for your own life.
Okay, so what happened when they actually compared these ranked lists? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The results showed some powerful and honestly pretty surprising differences.
Right off the bat, you see this fundamental difference at the very top of the list. For Gen Y, the absolute #1 life goal was family security, which when you think about it, makes perfect sense for a generation that grew up seeing national crises. In uncertain times, you focus on protecting the people you love. But for Gen X, who lived through that economic boom, the top priority was health, a focus on personal well-being.
Now get ready for a surprise. Given that Gen X grew up under all those shifting political regimes, you'd probably guess they'd place the highest value on freedom, wouldn't you? But look at this. It was actually Gen Y, the digital natives, who grew up with the wide-open internet, who valued freedom way more. For them, it was the fourth most important goal in life. But for Gen X, it was all the way down at number 13. That is a huge difference. And here we have this fascinating clash in work philosophy. When it came to the how, the journey to success, Gen Y believed the key was to be ambitious. But Gen X, they had a totally different priority. They valued being capable, having the actual concrete skills to do the job right.
And the study found even more sharp contrasts. You see, Gen X was more focused on individual achievement and being practical, valuing things like a sense of accomplishment and being logical. And then you have Gen Y, who leaned way more into social connection and openness, ranking true friendship and being broad-minded really, really high.
So all this brings up a much bigger question, doesn't it? Are these generational traits universal? Is a Gen Xer in Thailand basically the same as a Gen Xer in the UK? To figure that out, we've got to zoom out and put this whole thing into a global context.
Let's just take one of these values, pleasure, which is defined as having an enjoyable, leisurely life, and let's see how important it is as we kind of go around the world.
So for generations in Western countries, say like Colombia and the UK, having a life of pleasure is a moderately to very important life goal. It pretty consistently ranks in the top half of their priorities.
But here's the kicker. For generations in places like Afghanistan and, you guessed it, Thailand, pleasure just wasn't a priority. It ranked low on the list for both Gen X and Gen Y there.
What this shows us is pretty profound. While we can talk about Gen X or Gen Y as these big global things, their core values, their mental maps, are deeply co-written by their local culture and history. A generation, it turns out, is a product of both its time and its place.
Which, really, leaves us with one final thought. Beyond just your birth year, what are the major events, the economic crises, the technological leaps, the cultural movements that have written the story of your own values?